Welcome to Off the Court, a show dedicated to making you the best version of yourself as a player and as a person. I'm Coach Jack, CEO and owner of Close the Gate Hoops. If you're trying to take your life and game to the next level, this is the podcast for you. Let's get it. We are live. What up, gatekeepers? Back at you with another episode of Off the Court. Today, increasing your impact. And before we get started and dive in deep to our topic, I just want to remind you, gatekeepers, if you're listening to this on Apple Podcasts, please leave us a review. We're at 53 5-star reviews, but with 3,000 listeners, it would really help us if more of you left a review so that we can reach a wider audience and then, of course, accomplishing our goal of influencing as many lives as possible. So today, this is another great topic that Coach Aaron picked out. Coach Connor is not with us today, so it's just me and Coach Aaron. Aaron, do you want to start us off on why you chose this and some of your thoughts on what increasing your impact is and how you can improve upon it?
Absolutely. So the reason I kind of picked this one was because at CTG, probably one of our biggest goals is to impact as many people as we possibly can. The more people you impact, the better world you're going to be living in. And that's kind of how we think about it. We want to be able to make others better around us. It really ties in very well to basketball because it's almost like from a team aspect, that's exactly what you want as well. You want to impact your own team in a positive manner and create a kind of culture, which is another thing we've talked about. But you want to create a kind of culture that will, be successful and something that works for you as a team.
100%. And you'll notice that the best basketball players on every team are the ones that can make people better around them. It's not ones that just benefit from their play themselves.
Right. Yeah. And those are the guys, they don't show up in the stat sheet, but you see them like just making a huge impact on the team. Like you see, you'll see
You can
NBA.
say Chris Paul.
Well, yeah. That's a good example too, right? Every single team he's been on, their record has gotten way better just because he's such a great leader and he has a great impact on his team, not only on the court, but in terms of
Influence.
Yeah, right. And you also see a lot of NBA teams, they'll just randomly sign like a veteran player that he's not really going to get too much playing time, but he's a great locker room presence. He like those veterans, they know how a team works and they know how a good team should run. So those are the kind of people that you want on your team are the ones that are going to impact your team in a positive way.
It's a similar concept to us trying to help you not make the same mistakes we did when we were younger. And I'm sure that's why teams bring in these veterans so that they can help these younger players get through the adversity they did faster.
Definitely.
So that was a great point, Aaron. For me personally, one of the biggest things to start small and grow and improve upon increasing your impact is first impressions are a really big deal because you only get one first impression. And yes, the opinions of others do not matter, but the people that are close to you and your influence around them, that's what truly matters. And what I mean by you only get one first impression, say you're in a bad day or a bad mood, that's when a lot of people can screw up, right? It's because you meet someone for the first time and say you're having a bad day. Well, that person hasn't met you before, okay? Mm-hmm. And then you give them a bad first impression, then that completely changes the outlook of your presence and the kind of energy that you're giving back to people.
Yes.
Right? So that's why it's super cliche, but one of the most important things you can do when you're meeting someone for the first time is smile, or at least make the appearance of positive energy, because that energy will then influence and affect the person you're talking to. And then you're going to have that great first impression, and you only get one of those. So that would be my first big piece of advice, is to appear positive with your perception.
Yeah, it's like if you go to a restaurant or something, all the servers are just going to kiss up to you because they want to make a great impression on their customers so that you come back.
Well, imagine if a server came up to you and they just had a straight face and they just look like they weren't happy.
Right. You're not gonna have a good first impression. You're not gonna
want to go back there.
And they're gonna go tell their friends. They're like, "Oh, the service was awful. They
Exactly.
stared at me and didn't smile." But yeah, definitely. First impressions are huge. To truly impact someone, you kind of got to build a relationship with them. 'Cause like that's a huge part of what we try to do here too. We try to build a relationship with all of our students, and to do that, you want them to like you right off the bat. You know, you want to kind of like build a relationship right from the get-go.
I mean, we're not saying it's impossible if you have a bad first impression.
Right.
Like, I know plenty of people that rubbed me the wrong way when I first met them, but then I actually became really, really good friends with them.
Yeah.
It's just easier to make an impact, therefore increasing it when you do have that good first impression.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Another one of the key concepts, Aaron, that I put down in terms of increasing your impact is listening. Listening in terms of all aspects of life, your relationships, your family, your friends, even your students, the ones we train. Listening to someone talk about themselves is probably the most confidence boosting thing you can do to someone, right? And what a lot of people don't like to do is listen to someone else talk about themselves because they're concerned about themselves.
Yeah.
When in reality, the person that is talking to you so much and they can see that you're listening and actually intentionally listening like well, they're going to be greatly impacted by anything you say.
Yeah.
Because you're willing to do that.
And I remember your dad was really good at that. I remember you talking about that. That's why he had such a huge impact on every single person he met, because he was just so good at listening to people, and people loved to talk to him because of that.
Yeah, people would say he was the most famous, non-famous person
that's right.
that he'd ever met.
Yeah, and that's because it's just people's human nature to want to talk about themselves. And it's like when someone's talking to you, or like you want to appeal to what they want, if that makes sense. You want to appeal to like their values and their emotions, because that's what's going to get them drawn into you, if that makes sense.
And next time you're having a conversation with literally anyone, notice how much you talk about yourself, because I guarantee you do it way more than you think. And we're not saying that that's a bad thing, but constantly doing that can rub people the wrong way. Therefore, your words don't have as much meaning, and therefore your impact can't have as much meaning.
Well, yeah, I've ever since I heard that, I kind of started like it became more conscious to me, and I would like in a conversation, I would start like when the other person's talking, you start, without even noticing, you start thinking about the next thing you're going to say about yourself, and you're not even really truly listening to what they're saying. You know, so it's kind of funny how unnoticeable that is, but it's really true. It's human nature. People just want to talk about themselves, and you being the person that's going to listen to them is going to it's going to leave an impact right away.
For sure. And one thing too that I need to work on as well. I've done a great job of listening, but I have to do a better job of listening intentionally, meaning not just sit there and let them talk the whole time.
Right.
You actually have to respond with something meaningful.
Yeah.
Not just nodding your head the entire time they talk.
Yeah, you wanna be able to like grasp what they're saying and show that you're grasping it. You know. 100%. Yeah. So going along with that, like a lot of people lack a lot of self-awareness or empathy. You know, when they're talking to someone, and that's a huge thing. When you have true empathy for someone, when someone's talking to you, it's gonna show, and then it makes you a lot more impactful, and people are a lot more willing to want to talk to you if you're empathetic towards whatever they got going on.
And for the younger listeners, Coach Aaron, do you want to let them know what you mean by empathy?
When I say empathy, I mean you truly want to try to understand what they're going through and feel what they're going through, if that makes sense. So it's like, you've heard the old quote, like, you got to walk in their shoes or something.
I was just going to say that.
Yeah. If you're in line at a restaurant or something, and someone starts yelling at someone else or something like that, you know, you see someone not being a very good person or not being very nice.
Yep.
You automatically assume the worst, that this guy just sucks. Like, but you really never know what's actually happening in their life. You know, they could have just, you know, had something terrible happen right before that. So it's when I say empathy, it's truly important to just be more conscious about that kind of stuff. You know, when you see someone, you might automatically think that they're just a bad person, but you never really know what is actually happening.
Yeah, and empathy is probably the number one thing that increases gratefulness. We say it all the time. You never know what someone's going through. That person that cut you in line or started cussing could have just gotten fired from their job and they can't pay rent or something. You just can't let these things cut too deep into the surface. You have to keep an open mind about everything, never holding grudges or thinking that something's definite. because something can always change.
Yeah.
And same thing with people that maybe there's someone in high school that you didn't like a lot, and then you see them 2 years later and they're like a completely different person. So these things aren't always set in stone. And same thing goes for you that are listening. You can always change yourself as well.
Yeah. And we've talked about that, especially because a lot of our viewers are younger. You believe the world is so finite, like where you are right now. By finite, I mean it's not changing, but it's truly like it changes a lot, and not everything is going to be the same always.
100%. So we've talked about first impressions are a great start in terms of increasing your impact. And then, of course, listening, adding credibility to you as a person and what you are truly deep down. The next step to doing that, though, is being able to communicate and talk efficiently in front of people. And this is something that this is a perfect example of what you were just talking about, Aaron, in terms of we think things are so definite when we're younger. I always thought I was an introvert. Like, I told myself I was an introvert. I don't really like people at all. I don't like talking to people. I like being by myself. And yes, at times that is 100% true. But now we've made over 20 podcasts of me spilling my guts out in front of the entire world. And I train for a living. I'm always talking in front of parents. I'm always talking in front of kids. Like, as a kid, I told myself I was an introvert, meaning I don't want to talk to anyone. But that's literally what I do for a living now. So communicating is the number one piece in terms of increasing your impact. Because if you can't reach yourself to whatever age you're going through, and this goes exactly what we're talking about in terms of listening intentionally, then you're not going to be able to impact them. So that's why whenever I'm training, it depends on their age, I'm always trying to build that relationship with them, because then that adds credibility to what I say. The number one thing to becoming a good trainer or teacher or anything in that type of realm is building that relationship and actually caring about them. Yeah. Because that makes you 5 times better at making them better when you truly care for them more than you actually do yourself. Oh, yeah. And it's so hard for kids to understand, because like when we're getting mad about a kid for having bad body language or something like that, in their own heads, they're like, I hate this guy. But we care so much that we just, because even in our shoes, like we did the same exact thing. But now looking at kids that were in the same exact position we're like, don't do that, because that's going to get you farther and farther from where you want to be. Yeah.
It's insane. When I was younger, like some of the little minuscule things that I would do that I notice now, I see younger kids doing now, that when I was younger, I would think it wouldn't matter at all. Like now looking at it as a trainer and older, knowing what I know, it's funny to watch, because, I mean, I didn't know that at the time. But yeah, so Jack would always, he would tell me to act like the kids I was training were my kids. And that was like, it truly made me, like, when I thought about it in that way, I actually, I truly cared about it more. And I really, really, really wanted to see these kids succeed. And I wanted to, like, see their growth, because I knew how much they wanted it too, because of how hard they were working. So it inspired me in that way.
And when you have that type of care for people, that care is obviously going to rub back towards you, which obviously helps you out as a person as well. But the number one way to increase communication and being able to speak in front of people is by just doing it as much as possible, right? The more and more I listen to the podcasts, the later episodes, we're starting to get really good at it. That's mainly because we're putting over 50, hundreds of hours on speaking in front of a microphone. Yeah. So obviously we're going to get really, really good at it. And we've talked about it before, starting before you're ready. Just try to speak as much as possible and put yourself in as many uncomfortable situations as you can. Yeah. Like whenever I say you see someone that's an acquaintance and you're like, you have that moment if like you're supposed to say something to them or not. Like I always try to go up and have a conversation with them. Yeah. Because I'm going after those uncomfortable situations, because eventually everything is going to be comfortable for me if I do that.
Yeah. I've definitely tried to do that more too. What was the first episode I was on? Was it episode 2? I think it was. Yeah. And I came in here, I was sweating buckets. The light was shining in my face. I was like, I'd never had a microphone in front of me before, so I was like, I didn't know what I was doing. I started before I was ready, and I was super nervous. And now I'm sitting here doing it, and I feel like I'm just having a conversation with Jack, and it's so much easier. And it's all just because we just did it so many times, and it gets so much easier.
And think about the first day you trained, right?
Oh yeah, I was scared of fifth graders, and
Uh-huh.
and now it feels like, and that just came from building a relationship with my students. I got a lot more comfortable with it as time goes on, and I became more confident in what I knew too. So it was just that became easier. But yeah, it's all about just getting out there and doing it, starting before you're ready.
And that's why I think when we grow up and we see a lot of parents that their ability to talk in front of people and things of that nature, it's because they've just done it so much.
Yeah.
So a lot of it's just putting yourself in those situations as many times as you can.
Mm-hmm.
But that's something I encourage all of you gatekeepers to do, and just never think something set its own. Never tell yourself you're a or most people say they're not a morning person. Never tell yourself that. Never say you're an introvert or an extrovert. Always open the door to change, and just know that everyone you've ever looked up to, they can impact people through their ability to speak to them, right? And you're going to struggle to influence and impact as many people as you can if you can't reach them in that way. And another great example is when I talked in front of Adams Elementary.
Mm-hmm.
That was an example. I was so nervous to talk in front of these kids that are like 9 and 10 years old. But that was probably the first time that I've actually spoken in front of more than like 100 people, which is crazy to think about. And I'm sure like if I do it a couple more times, I'll still be nervous. But eventually, yeah, I'd love to have Close the Gate talking in front of all these schools and our message in terms of trying to create more of a life coaching aspect with basketball.
Mm-hmm.
But you have to be able to speak in front of people powerfully in terms of they're going to walk away with something you said and it alters their life, right? Of course, we talk about it all the time at Chasing Failure. I got a bunch of texts from parents after the Adams thing, and they're like, these kids are obsessed with this productivity notebook, and they're talking about wanting to fail. And like, that's the stuff you can't do if you can't speak in front of people effectively.
And every single interaction you have with people, it's either a deposit or a withdrawal. So
I like that.
The goal should always be to give it to put in a deposit, if that makes sense. You always want to add something to their life. They walk away knowing something, walk away in a better mood, things like that. A withdrawal would be like, they walk away and they're just frustrated that they had a conversation with you, or they have less energy because they spent the whole time listening to you just talk about yourself or things like that, right? So you want to try to give something every single interaction you have.
Where'd you hear that? That's a good one.
I was reading it somewhere. I don't remember.
That was a good one. I like that a lot. One person that, if you're a little older gatekeepers, one person that I have actually studied in terms of their speaking is Barack Obama. That's why I always liked him as a president, because I could listen to him talk for a long time.
He was a good speaker.
Yeah. And so you can really make changes in people's lives when you are a good speaker and can communicate like that. So I think Barack Obama is a perfect example of that.
Yeah. The older and older I've got, the more I've noticed how important communication is, because it's everything.
Yep.
It's everything. That's how you get everything.
And it's how you communicate. That's what makes people walk away with, like you said, deposits or withdrawals. That's why it's so important to be a good communicator.
Yeah. Going along with how you communicate, that like something we've talked about before is reframing. So I kind of learned a lot about this in one of my classes I took in college. It was about rhetoric.
Okay.
So it was like he was constantly talking about how you say things, right? Because you could say the exact same thing, but it could be a deposit, or you could say the same thing and it could be a withdrawal, if that makes sense. Like you could tell someone that,
the way you say it.
Yeah, like if you're trying to give someone like constructive criticism, there's a way to say it. I can't really think of an example right off the top of my head right now, but like you can either deposit someone with something they could work on or some kind of advice, or it could be a withdrawal by just insulting them, if that makes sense. So that's why reframing is a super important thing to work on.
And reframing gatekeepers, what I say all the time is perception is reality. Literally any situation can be reframed as a positive or negative, or a deposit or withdrawal. And that's why it's very important that you always reframe to the positive. Yeah. Like whenever something bad happens in my life, or something that I would normally view as negative, like my previous self, I always say everything happens for a reason. There's a reason that had to happen so you could learn from it.
Absolutely.
Right? So that's a perfect example of reframing the situation.
Absolutely.
And in terms of progressing from being able to communicate effectively, the next step would be able to communicate in a sense of, you wrote down empowerment, Aaron, or giving confidence to the person that you're talking to. That is probably the number one thing that a trainer has to do to a basketball player, is instilling confidence in them. And that's why I say 99% of the game of basketball is mental, right? Someone could be a way better shooter than someone else, like put in way more reps. But if their state of mind is a lot worse than the person that hasn't put any reps, then the person that hasn't put any reps is going to do better.
Yeah.
Like I know that to be a fact because their state of mind is much more confident. And a good example I have is I was playing some of my freshmen in 2-ball. It was Gavin, Easton, and Cooper. And I was playing Gavin. He's a lefty. And I told him I'll beat him lefty. And I went like 5 for 8 from 3 lefty. So I beat him around in 2-ball. It's a game where you got to make one from each spot. I never put any reps in with lefty. So right there, it tells me it was my mentality, right? I thought I was going to be so good if I could make all these shots lefty. But that proves to me that mental is so much more important than the actual reps you put in as a shooter.
That's something that I've just recently learned, is how important the mental game is in basketball. Like, it's like, and I never really knew that until I started training, until you started showing me like all the information and stuff. It's insane, because that's like, if you want to get better, like the quickest you can, work on your brain, work on your mentality, because like that's something that not a lot of people, especially when they're younger, like know about. So it's a great way to give yourself an advantage over other people that don't know about that.
And a perfect example for me is recently we've been playing at the athletic club, the men's league, and all of us. I train myself year-round, and a lot of my friends have stopped playing basketball other than Blake. A lot of them have seen me and seen how much I've improved and think highly of me as a basketball player. And I walk into the Janesville Athletic Club, and I have one of the worst days of my life in terms of how I played. And right then and there, it's not like my skill got any worse that day. It was all my mentality. Right. I couldn't make a shot, so then it affected my defensive side of things. My everything else was just downgraded because my mentality that I was missing. And I was super upset about it, and then I thought about it, and I was like, I got to make sure this stuff doesn't happen for when I go play at Platteville. That stuff has to happen so that it doesn't happen again. But that just tells me, like, being able to not think and be in a good state of mind is more important than literally anything, not just basketball, but in your life as well. Like, it changes everything.
Yeah, that's a positive mindset and confidence are two things that you gotta have. I think that we could like make an entire podcast where we just talk about complete nonsense, but if we were confident enough, people would just listen to us and they would love it. Like,
100%.
Because I saw this video, or no, it was a TED Talk, and this guy, he was like explaining, he was like, I am talking about literally nothing this whole time. Like, he was talking about absolutely nothing, but he sounded so confident. So it was just, and the whole point was that if you're confident and you have like the right mindset, that you could leave an impact on anyone and not even say anything, you know? So confidence is huge.
We've talked about this before, but there's a difference between cockiness and confidence, right? Confidence is internal, cockiness is external. Yeah. We want you to be cocky in your own brain, basically. Right. You got to be talking yourself up, and you got to truly believe what you're talking, but you don't have to say that to other people. And I think you're a good example, Aaron. You do a great job of self-talk when you play, just because of how well you play without practicing, right? So that you're in a good state of mind a lot of times that you play. And I've experienced that as well, just because I haven't been training as much on court as I normally do, but I still perform almost even better than I did when I shot like 4 hours a day. It's because my state of mind has been much better. Yeah. So that's really, really important.
The confidence is something, you can't just get that out of anywhere, but it comes from reps and like repetition and you knowing what you're capable of, because the more you work on things, the more confident you're going to be because of that work you put in. And it's the same thing with with life, like we were talking about earlier, just being able to communicate with people. The more you communicate with people, the more confident you're going to be in your ability to do that. It goes back to just jumping in before you're ready, and then that's just going to increase your confidence.
And a lot of that too, there's almost like a point of no return with reps, because it's like the whole reason you're doing these reps is to gain enough confidence at that certain point. Say like pull-up jumpers going to the left, right? You don't necessarily need to keep repping that out if you already have the maximum confidence that you do in that situation. So that's a good example of not being as efficient as you could be and almost overtraining at that point. Like if you're good at pull-up jumpers going left, then do the same thing like 5 feet behind that point, right? You got to keep finding ways to reach that point of confidence in every possible situation.
Yeah.
But you're right. Like, reps is the number one way to get confidence. But once you are at that point, that doesn't necessarily mean you need to keep doing it.
Definitely, yeah. There's a fine line between, you know, reps, doing as many reps as you possibly can, and trying to get better more efficiently.
And it took me a while to figure that out. Like, I always thought, like, if you kept repping, like you're always improving, that's not necessarily the case.
Right.
There's always something that you could be using. Like, even when you think you're using your time as well as possible, there's always another way that you could be using it better.
Oh, definitely, yeah.
So that's why that's very important to do that.
And that's the huge thing that we try to do. As trainers, your number one goal should be not only just to get you better, but better as fast as possible.
Mm-hmm.
And that the way to do that is by, like what we were just talking about, is efficiently using your time.
And that's honestly why basketball players are just continuing to evolve, because they're learning more and more things on how to get better faster.
Yeah.
Right? Like, in the 90s, to get better, they probably knew like 3 basketball moves. And since then, there's been like hundreds of innovations. And like, people don't understand, there's going to be moves will be created naturally over time. Like, they're not going to end. There's going to be more and more footwork that you're going to be able to do. We just don't know how to do it yet. Yeah. Which is kind of crazy.
Well, I've noticed that too. When I was like younger, I was like, there's like, we know everything. We know all the moves. Especially like recently, I feel like people have been getting better faster. Like, and it's like, I've noticed that too, that there's like new things that I start doing and I'm like, wow, okay.
You've gotten better since you started training.
Oh, definitely. I agree, because I've started paying more attention to what I was doing and kind of like watching my footwork and things like that, because I mean, and yeah, the more conscious you are about things like that, the better basketball player you'll be.
Yeah. No, I was watching one of our one-on-one games like in November. And you are way, way better than you were in November. Because your footwork is just way better. Yeah. That's going to be so interesting to see what kind of moves are going to be like in the future. Right. But I'm sure that's what people thought in the 90s. Like, we got it all figured out. We're at the peak, but you just keep evolving. Yeah. I think that's hard for people to understand sometimes.
Because it's like beyond our understanding how what else could be made, you know? Yeah.
Yeah. That's an awesome point.
That's like with life too. Like, you feel like right now we know all the keys to how to be successful and everything in life and how to be efficiently working and things like that. But like, more things come out all the time, you know? So it's like you can constantly be learning. I
tweeted that one time. It was like, you figured it out when you realize that no one has it figured out. Right. And what I mean by that is that the people that think they have it figured out are the ones that aren't going to be going places. The people that know that there's so much unknown and there's always going to be unknown and are constantly learning, those are the people that are going to make a giant impact on the people around them. Oh, yeah. You want to go into a quick speed round, or is there anything else you wanted to add before we do that?
I guess the last thing I would say, my last piece of advice would be to just completely be yourself in front of everyone you meet, because that's how you truly make an impact on people. People are going to notice when you're not being yourself, or like when you're trying to put on some kind of act for them. Because if you're trying to change who you are to satisfy them, then it's just not worth it, and you shouldn't have to do that. You know, you just got to be yourself in front of everybody.
No, 100%. Because people aren't going to take your credibility as much if they're not being themselves. Yeah, right.
Definitely.
And you got to have credibility for people to actually take in what you're saying.
Definitely, yeah.
Awesome. What was your favorite candy as a kid?
As a kid?
I know mine.
I think Sour Patch Kids.
Really?
Yeah, I like
the
those
normal version.
Yeah, those are really good. Or Skittles. Sour Patch Kids or Skittles are my two favorites.
I was gonna say Sour Skittles.
Yeah.
Sour Skittles. I had a lot of sour Skittles.
I remember going to like the high school basketball games and just going to the concessions. Always sour Skittles.
Always sour Skittles.
It'd always be that.
Those were the best.
So you're on a road trip, and you stop at a gas station, and you can buy 3 different things. What are your 3 things that you buy?
Did you just come up with that, or did you see that?
No, I just came up with that.
That was pretty good. Okay. What gas station?
You are at a Quick Trip.
Oh, okay. That changes a lot. Definitely getting one of those milkshake thingies. What are those called?
The for real things?
Yes, those are good.
Oh, yeah.
So that's 1. 2, I had a waffle chicken sandwich from Quick Trip one time, and it was probably the best thing I've ever had.
Really, I might have to try that.
Yeah, so that would be my second thing. And then 3, I'm on a road trip, so I'm probably going to grab a Red Bull.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, I need some caffeine.
All right.
That was an awesome question. Awesome gatekeepers. Thank you for listening again. Just remember that you only get one first impression. Listening is the number one way to gain credibility, and the number one way to increase your impact is being able to communicate effectively and speak in front of others in a way that touches them and lets them take home what you're saying so that it can change and alter their life. Right, because that's the number one way and the number one reason that why we're here, right? We talked about that in episode 1, is generational influence, to influence and impact people for the better and to impact and influence as many lives as possible. So thank you again, gatekeepers, for listening. Remember to leave us reviews. We're at 53 5-star reviews. We would love to get more so that we can reach a wider audience and maybe get ranked on Apple Podcasts. That would be pretty cool. Thanks again for listening. I'm Coach Jack.
I'm Coach Aaron.
We out, baby. Peace. Thank you guys so much for listening to this episode of Off the Court. If you're listening to this on Apple Podcasts, please don't forget to leave reviews if you haven't yet. This helps us with engagement and helps us rank higher to make an influence on more basketball lives. I also strongly encourage you guys to check out our free ebook download that's 25 pages long, How to Unlock the Mental Side of the Game. I was a player that was constantly grinding and constantly working, and it was really hard for me not to see results from the amount of work I was putting in. But this ebook that I wrote dives exactly into those types of questions. I was completely ignoring the most important part of basketball, which is the mental side of the game. So the 25-page ebook that I wrote is for you guys to give yourselves a leg up on your competition and almost like a secret weapon. I call it the basketball cheat code. Also, check out our website, ctghoops.com. On there, we got tons of programs that you guys can download to make yourselves a better basketball player. We have the CTG Productivity Notebook, helping you guys become addicted to productivity. Of course, in-person training. We are located now in multiple cities. And then we have the CTG blog, free education on becoming your best basketball self. Lastly, follow all our social media pages at CTG Hoops, where we post multiple times a day, trying to make you the best player and person that you can be. All the links for these are down in the description below. Thank you guys so much. Make sure you guys check out all the other episodes of Off the Court, and make sure you're ready for next week's episode. I'm Coach Jack. We out, baby. Peace.